right, this is very fun for me, and I'll tell you why. First of all, thank you. Your two panelists are fabulous people who are very, very, very passionate people. And we had a wonderful prep call a few weeks ago, and I could tell that they're really, really into knowing more about you and what's going on in your world. And so you're going to learn a lot about them. And the woman who is moderating the panel, this is Jana Henthorn. Jana is the president and CEO of the Cable Center. She's the first woman appointed to that position. So I think that's pretty amazing. And I got to work with Jana for 9 fabulous years. She actually helped put me where I am today. She helped guide me, and she let me just go and do my thing. And I call her Grace Under Fire. In 9 years, she never raised her voice, ever. And she could have, several times. She never raised her voice. She just handled it and asked me how I would handle it. And I think that just shows what an incredible leader she is. I could talk a lot about Jana Henthorn, but I don't want to eat up any more of their time. I'm just grateful that she made it here from Colorado. And I would love for you to make a very nice welcome for Jana Henthorn.
Thank you, Dolly. Back at you, by the way. And I've been friends with Evan a long time, so I do raise my voice, and I use the F word now. So I have 2 fabulous panelists here, Daphne Kwan and Clayton Banks. Daphne's with BetaWorks Studio, and Clayton is with Silicon Harlem. How many of you Googled these 2? Show me your hands. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's your homework. That was your homework. So that's your first tip of this panel, is when you're going to see somebody, Google them first, so you can really get into what they're doing. I learned that from a guy who from C-SPAN who came to speak, and he excoriated the students, raised his voice, Dolly, because they hadn't Googled him before the class started. So,
well, to be fair, I haven't Googled any of you either.
Fair enough, fair enough. Let's start then, since you guys didn't Google them, by would you 2 tell us a bit about how you got to where you are today, and in very entrepreneurial setting, but I know you didn't start out there. And let's don't talk about summer vacations or anything. How about starting with college and on from there?
Hi, everybody. I'm Daphne. So I went to University of Michigan undergrad, and then from there started out in investment banking, learned I didn't want to be a banker, went to the Walt Disney Company in LA in their strategic planning department, which was the corporate department. Went to business school, went back to Disney, but in the meantime they had bought ABC, so I went to ABC where I worked with a colleague of Judy's, Jerry Laybourne, who was the Nickelodeon companion to the MTV that Judy innovated, and then left ABC with Jerry to start Oxygen Media, which is a women's cable network. I left there to start my own digital video company, did that for a while, and then went to Goop, which is a lifestyle site out in California, run by Gwyneth Paltrow, so I worked there for a couple years. And then now I ended up at BetaWorks Studios, and we can talk about how I did all those crazy different jobs, but that was the path that leads me to where I am now.
Well, before you go, Clayton, tell me what in all those moves, Daphne, was the one that your parents hated?
Yeah. So they hated when I went to the University of Michigan and decided not to be a doctor, right? So right there, I was already way out of favor. But I will tell you, so for the first 8 to 10 years of my career, every job I took was a pay cut, every single one of them. And so we can talk about it later, but for me, what I was trying to do is find the industry, the job, the people that I wanted to be near, and the pay didn't matter to me. It wasn't a marker of my success. What was a marker of my success was that I enjoyed what I was doing more and more and more. I liked the people I was with more and more and more, and I could see being there and staying there longer. So the pay I knew would come back up, but my pay, if I reverse it to you, was like this and then back like that, right? So, but my happiness was a different story.
Please.
May I? First of all, let me say, Dolly, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's just great to be amongst the students and amongst these fellow distinguished speakers. And thank you all for being here and tolerating me. I have been very, very fortunate. I'll be very honest with you. From childhood to this very day, I've been very happy. So there are 5 passions that I have. Yes, I can knock on your head if I had to. But 5 passions that I've had. One is movies. Anybody here love movies? Okay, we're almost cousins. If we match 3 of these of 5, we're probably cousins. So I love movies. I went to work for Showtime Networks, and I thought I'd be there forever. I loved it. I was around movies the whole time. I launched the movie channel here in New York City. I love it, and we can talk about movies and actors and actresses after this. The second passion I have is comedy. Anyone ever like comedy? Oh my Lord, my family's here. So after Showtime, which I thought I'd be there forever, I had this great opportunity to go to work for Comedy Central. And as you heard Judy talking about, I was on the team that launched South Park. So literally, when I got to Comedy Central, it was a fledgling network, about 50% penetrated in the country. And we had this crazy script that all the networks turned down. And we put it on the air late at night because we were scared. And the thing took off. And I was in heaven because I love comedy. I thought the show was great. But we also had lots of stand-up comedians. I was there when we hired Jon Stewart, the whole thing. So it was great. Like, wow, I love this stuff. My third passion is video games. So that we created a startup called Sega Channel. Anybody like video games here? These are my family here. You see that? Look at that. So
Those are your cousins, right?
These are my cousins all over the place. So the thing about Sega was it was the very first all digital network in the history of television, meaning that we had a complete system working on you guys are too young to know, but a system called the Genesis. If you remember the Sega, who remembers that? Sega Genesis. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. So that, again, like I'm playing video games all day, basically. Like, this one will work. So that was a lot of fun. And then my fourth passion, and I'm going to wrap this up very quickly, but my fourth passion is technology. Since a child, my father used to let me play in the garage all the time with all his tools and all this stuff and break down radios and computers and everything else. So I love technology. And with all the things that I had done, I wanted to figure out if I could create my own. And as the internet was sort of coming along, and I had seen it earlier than most people from a research perspective, so it wasn't commercialized through AOL and all this stuff when I was getting access to it. So I thought I could build a company around the internet, particularly around software development, which I did. Took me all around the country, took me all around the world, ended up working for President Clinton, the whole piece. I've got stuff in the public, in his library, in the Library of Congress. So I did all this great stuff because I love technology. I couldn't wait to get my hands on stuff all the time. And the fifth one is where I'm at right now. Right now, I'm the CEO of Silicon Harlem, and the essence of that company is how do you move people and communities forward. Nothing is more important in my life right now, and Judy kind of alluded to it. She's spending the rest of her time trying to provide as much access and exposure as she can since she has had so much. It's the same with me. I've had so much access and exposure that I want to share it with as many possible people as I can because I already know people are smart. You just need to get the access and exposure. So that's where I'm at right now, and I'm feeling good.
Especially with all your family here in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you said, Daphne, about when you made those different moves, they were not always a move up the chain, or you took a pay cut or a lateral move. I think that's a very important point for all of you. I know I did that, and best move I ever made, because I was at the corporate office and I made the move to go out to the systems to get that cred, that street cred. And I came back, and that all paid off, but I had to swallow hard and do that, and it was the right move. Have you done that also, Clayton?
Nope. I did when I started my own business. I remember when I started my own business by myself. The first one was Sega Channel. We raised $30 million, so there was no shortage of money, and I made a whole lot. But when I bounced on my own and started a company called Immersion, I remember thinking, wow, I'm not making the money I used to make, and suddenly American Express did a contract with me, and I had $1 million check on my desk, and I said, oh, this is what I'm talking about, you know what I mean? I never got $1 million check from Showtime or any of these other people, so I got $1 million check sitting on my desk. I stared at it for 30 days, like, wow. And 6 months later, I was looking for money like a crackhead. Like, where'd that money go? You know what I mean? So I do realize what it is to take a cut, because I took a complete cut having to start my own business, to where I had to literally fight and scratch and work hard to get up to the money I was making in corporate America. But it was worth it every single day and every single penny.
And that's what I want to talk about next, is what motivated both of you to go from really corporate positions, very high-level corporate positions, to start your own companies, the entrepreneurial way of life. What was that?
Yeah, for me it was a little bit of safety, because I was with the boss Jerry, who was Jerry Leroy, who was starting Oxygen, and so I got to go with her. So I was a little bit protected in that. But it was a startup. I was employee zero. We had no money. We were raising it. But I think it's almost tied. The money and the leaving the corporation is tied a little bit to the responsibility. So the thing that I love about entrepreneurialism, but it is also it was the reason that I took the path I took, was I never felt like I took a step down. So and Janet then corrected herself, and she said, no, I meant step and pay down, right? But I never felt I took a step down in when I moved to another job, because I was like, I'm in love with that job, right? Like, that's an awesome company, or that was an awesome job. And so and often the responsibilities were actually broader. So I had more responsibility, and that's the big thing about coming out of corporations. Is in corporations, you're think about it, right? That obviously you have to niche, you have to become an expert in something, you have to go narrow. And so stepping out of corporations, the big benefit is the responsibility you get, and the breadth of things that you can make decisions on, and that people that report to you. And so for me, that was always a step up. Like, if I went from Disney to Oxygen, where there was nobody, that was a huge step up for me, right? Because I got to start building a company, and I got all these people ask me questions that I had no idea what the answers were. But nobody did that at Disney, right? They all knew what the answers were. They only asked me to do stuff. So that I think was a big difference in corporate to entrepreneurialism. But that also is the difference in pay, until you go back up. Right, to your point. That's why you're doing it, is to go back up.
That $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to. Huh?
Oh, heck no. But for me, I can remember being, 5, 6 years old and wanting to do my own thing. My parents didn't let me, but I always wanted to do my own thing. And as soon as I could, at 10, 11 years old, I had my own paper route. Oh, man, I'm dating myself, right? Who throws around paper anymore? But I was a newspaper boy, and I would run around throwing newspapers. I would collect the money. I would then build up enough business where I could hire a friend so I could get it done twice as fast and make more money. So I always had that entrepreneurial spirit inside of me. My father never worked in corporate America. He was a military man. So the kind of corporate speak didn't go down in my household. It was, he was just a working guy. And so as I grew up, I realized that one of the things that I would need, and I don't know how I realized this, but in high school I said, 1, I got to go to college. 2, I got to get probably a master's degree. And then 3, I probably need to work for a company so I can learn how the hell to run my own company. And so I say that to you young people, that I know you're growing up in an era of start your own thing. I get it, the gig economy, all that kind of stuff, and I love it all. But I got to tell you, what worked for me was learning on someone else's dime. I was able to save money. I was able to make a lot of money. And so when I bounced out to do my own thing, I already had a cushion. I knew I had a cushion to be able to take whatever sort of struggle it was going to require. And because a lot of us think we can just get out of school and start our own business and everything's going to work out perfectly. It's not that easy, and clearly to me, entrepreneurialism is not for everyone. But if you can take the time to work on a job, learn the types of corporate structure you'll need, you mitigate your risk of failure. And let me just make one thing. Who's tweeting around here? All right, let me tell you a tweet.
This is nice. You write the tweets for us.
Here it is.
Self-proclaimed tweet.
You do not fail. Your business fails. You get the difference? When you hear people say, oh, I failed. No, you didn't fail. The business failed when you get into entrepreneurialism. So keep that in mind. This is not a failure on you. It's a failure on the business.
One thing I'd say about what Clayton was saying was, go to corporations to get that learning. I will tell you this. So I'm old now. I dye my hair so I don't look as old as I actually am, but I'm very old. And so when I look back on the path that I had, it was the network of people that I had that has saved me for my entire career, and I've not been unsuccessful in some of the things I've done. So when I say saved me, I mean, just wherever I was, I got even better because the network kind of just turned on, and they heard of a job and they knew me and they put it together. But that's where the corporation came in. So, and I would say especially to women, so if you think about yourself older, right, and think about a position, so say you're not going to start another company. I'm on my 4th startup, by the way, so I'm the owner of 4 companies founding stock, so I'm hooked on it. But say you're not going to start something and you're looking for a job, you're up against a guy, right? So let's just say you're up against a white guy for a second. And the other people who are hiring are most likely white guys. They don't have to be, but they're most likely on average, right? And so if they don't know you and they don't know them, they just know them better, right? They just know them better. And so just by genetics. And so what you need is somebody to champion you into that job, to know that that job was available, to know that those are good people to work for, and to put you together and then champion you a little bit so that they now know you better. And that was my network. And the corporate network is the best one because all those people just keep rising in the corporation and because they have nowhere else to go, and then they just end up at these really powerful positions, and then they see everything, and then they can pull you out. But the network is, in retrospect, I didn't know it till now, the thing that just makes your career happen when you are not doing it yourself. And I would say specifically as a woman, seeing myself up against those men, that other voice, that outside voice, that person I knew lobbying for me, that is what did it. So I haven't interviewed for a job in forever because my other friend did it for me. But I didn't get that from my upbringing. My dad was a chemist. My mom was a homemaker, right? I didn't get that, and I'm Asian, so there's not a ton of us up there, right? So it was the network of people. So anyway, so when he talks about corporate, there's there's the learning, and then there's the people. So.
Oh, you guys are so rich. This is great. This is wonderful, wonderful thinking for all of you. And I'm glad we're streaming this, Dolly. So it's out there in perpetuity. So, and I'll make one comment about the corporate piece, which is if you're acquired, which is happening more and more these days, that can be a great thing. When my cable company was bought by another cable company, 3,000 people dispersed and went to other cable companies. 3,000 people that I knew. And it just, it turned out, it was sad when the company closed, but it turned out really well. And also, I'll just say, here on other people's money. We call that OPM, other people's money. So if you have to pick the best of being in a corporate situation and the best in being in an entrepreneurial situation, what would that be? And if you already answered it, just say, Jan, I already answered that.
I've already answered it, but
Could you repeat for me?
by the way, uptown we say OPP. Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know me.
All right, so do I answer her question or should I just answer my own?
Answer your own.
Really? What was your
Go with
question,
it.
actually?
Go with it. Well, my question was, what's the best thing about being in the corporate situation and the best thing about being entrepreneurial?
Best thing being in the corporate, I mentioned in terms of being paid by them, which was nice. Checks don't bounce or anything like that. And the other thing for me, I agree with Daphne, the relationships. You know, it's relationships. I met some of my best friends at Showtime that I still are in touch with. I've met some great friends at each of the companies that I worked at that I still are involved in, and I've actually seen some of my friends become executives at these very companies we're talking about that stayed. Me bouncing out, I'm on a whole different trajectory, but I saw some of the peers that I worked with beginning of our careers who are now presidents of these companies. So when I have something going on, whether it's an event or something like that, it's easy to call them up and they'll say, yeah, we're going to sponsor that, or yeah, we're going to be able to do that. So you build up a network that's going to help you along the way as an entrepreneur. And on the entrepreneurial side, I think the greatest thing for me has been I feel so free. I feel like when I was in corporate America, I was very loyal, very much swallowed the red pill like in the Matrix. I was like all in. But I also knew that there was a certain amount of responsibility and accountability at that company that I had to be, really strict about. Here in my own company, I get to set my own culture. I get to set my own rules. I get to be able to literally have, sort of the leeway that I wished I could have had in corporate America. And as you go up the ladder in corporate America, you get more leeway, but I have 100% leeway in my company. There are some outside forces that will bring it back down to life, but for me, entrepreneurialism has been a sense of real responsibility of my own and freedom in some ways to where I don't have to answer to nobody. That's why I can talk the way I talk, because I don't have to answer to anyone.
Anything to add, Daphne?
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit already about what was great about both, but I'll tell you what I hated about both. So what I hated about corporate was the bureaucracy. Oh, my own. You can't get anything done in corporations. Like some people's job, they just think it is to say no and shut it down, right? And I actually was one of those people. But that's part of corporations is to play it safe and not rock the boat. And so the bureaucracy at corporations is mind-numbing and soul-crushing. However, as an entrepreneur, you don't get any sleep. You can't sleep. You're stressed out all the time, just constantly thinking about payroll, thinking about the people that you hired, thinking about the sale. It's just never ending. So the stress involved with starting a company is also soul crushing. But being in charge makes you feel like it gives you the hope that or the belief that you're going to pop out of that. Whereas in a bureaucracy or in a corporation, there's no hope. Like it's just going to be bureaucratic the whole time. But on the entrepreneurial side, you have the hope that it's going to get easier. You're going to make the big sale. You're going to get the $1 million check. It's going to be followed by 5 more $1 million checks, right? So there's hope there, but hope doesn't make you sleep any better.
One of the things we're doing at the Cable Center, which is an educational nonprofit funded by the cable industry, we're teaching a class in entrepreneurship. And what that means is how to be entrepreneurial in a big corporation. And it is catching on like wildfire. We're very, very pleased about it. And it's how, for young people, how to teach those entrepreneurial skills inside the bureaucratic corporation. And so I have great hope that that's going to keep some folks with the great ideas still inside the big corporations. So time will tell. I'll be back to you on it.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's important because there will be people that will come out of that program, or whether they stay in the company or bounce out into their own dream. Your infrastructure is what's influencing that, and that brings so much more credibility, frankly, even though you guys have a stellar reputation, but it'll bring a whole new audience to what you're talking about in terms of the cable center and everything else.
Thanks.
What I would say so for you guys out there, because I know there's a new way of working, but and this wasn't really anything that in my generation we did, but if you are in a corporation, keep your side hustles going, right? So if you got a side hustle going, if you're like a vlogger, or if you're if you're some other influencer in some way, or you're creating some content and you're putting it out there, keep that going, because those are things that you're gonna learn new skills at, you're gonna stay relevant, when you pop out, that's the stuff that's gonna differentiate you when you either look for another job or go to a startup. But don't just slot in somewhere in some corporation and then just go do your own stuff at night where you're just fucking around with your friends. Like, keep your side hustles going. Think about how you develop yourself outside. And I know you all have them, so just don't give those up.
That's a great point. Great point. And you'll meet interesting people in your side hustles too. Did you have something you wanted to say there, Clayton?
I could actually debate this issue, but I won't, because I'm going to be nice.
Bring it.
Bring it.
Bring it.
I wrote on
What's wrong with what I said?
I rode on a private plane with the CEO of Cablevision back in the day, and I was like, wow, this is terrific,
I know who that is. Okay.
This is pretty, you know who that is. This is pretty awesome. And they also had a box at the Madison Square Garden. They also had a box at the Yankees. And my point is that some of you should think about becoming CEOs of a company. It's a fun job. I'm telling you. It is a fun job. And And every CEO I've talked to, not one has said, I have a side hustle. Not a single one. And anyone I do talk to that talks about side hustle, and I ask them how much money you're making, how do you measure your success, it's difficult for them to answer. Well, I'm not against following a dream. If you have a passion for something, you absolutely have to go for it. But it is not easy to become a CEO of a company if you're worried about some side hustle. So unless you have the capacity and the real commitment and the realization that perhaps you're not looking to become a CEO of a major company, I get it. I totally do. But some of us need to be thinking about a great corporate career to where you can run something, because you will have a voice, you will have influence, you will make sure the young kid that talked about diversity, all that kind of stuff can be dealt with if some of us are in the company. If all of us are so worried about some get-rich scheme, that keeps us out of the mainstream. So just be careful of that.
Unless you're black or a woman.
What? I'm neither
We're
one.
not. We're not the CEOs. It's hard. It's totally hard. So I think he's right. If you want to go up the corporate ladder, try and be CEO. It's the odds are against you, and they're getting easier, sure, but it is hard. We don't get hired, we don't get side hired, we don't get lateral or up hired. It's really hard. The odds are against you. So I would say do it if that's what you want to do, but understand the bias that is against you in those, embedded in those institutions. Fight it, do whatever you want. Don't hear me say you shouldn't go into corporations. I went to corporations, and I loved the people that were there. But just understand where the odds are versus starting your own thing and betting on yourself and just going a different path. But I totally buy down to the CEO of corporations, they're brilliant. They're incredibly smart. They're
Well,
talented.
what I heard you both saying is that you keep the side hustles, especially when you're on your way up, because that keeps you interesting and gives you other options. And what you're saying, Clayton, is somebody's got to stay in there to make change when they become the CEO. And the retort there was, that's not so easy.
Well, I'm trying to make the point that this isn't about what. At the end of the day, we're all the same. We're all the same, and I get the whole individual who might be judgmental and all this other stuff, but we're all the same. And if you kind of think that way, you know you can do anything you want to do. You can do anything you want to do, and you can make that happen. I know it's worked in my life. I haven't lived a life of deficit. I've lived a life of I can do anything. And I hope that most young people today will start to think like that. A lot of my peers do think in a deficit. It's not going to work because of this and that. It just doesn't resonate with me. But I'm going to just make this last point, if you don't mind. So one thing that I think is really important is believe in yourself, call yourself by your name and not by any other characterization. I just want to know who you are, and you should just know who I am as Clayton Banks. And I don't want you to ascribe anything to me by the way I look. Get to know me, who I am, and the more of us that do that. Listen, at the end of the day, this is about humanity. This is about our common humanity. We have much more in common than we have different. And I've been all over the world. All over the world, every country. Everywhere I've been. If I went to her house right now, if I went to your house right now, if I went to any of your homes and your mom was there or whatever, one of the first two questions outside of who's this big-ass dude is, are you hungry? Almost everywhere I've been everywhere on the planet. All the Arab countries, everywhere. They ask the same question. My point is, we've got much more in common than we have different. And if you focus on the differences, then you get the kind of vitriol that we see today. If we focus on our commonality, we realize that this isn't just about, and I talk about becoming a CEO or a successful entrepreneur or a side hustle. This is still about just the quality of life. That's the whole reason why this country was started, was to create a better quality of life than where we came from. And we need to focus in on that in order for you to have successful careers, successful homes, successful lives, have great families, do great things. I've made a lot of money, but it's not the focus for me. My focus is, how do I ensure the community that I live in and others that I can influence are thriving? Well beyond economically. They should be thriving on how their kids are being taken care of. Are there enough child care facilities? Why in Harlem, and all of you think about this question, I'm going to give it up. Why on every other corner is there a check cashing place in Harlem? You don't see them in Upper East Side. You don't see them in your neighborhood. You don't see them in your neighborhood. You don't see them in my neighborhood. But in Harlem, well, I do have a home in Harlem, but I have a home in Westchester too. The point is, there's a check cashing place on every other corner. If you don't know why that is, you probably are not even paying attention to that type of population. I know why it is, and I know all the circumstances that go behind it. My point is that all of you have this great, expansive, long road to travel right now, and put your focus on the great notion of America, which is creating a quality of life that you will be proud of and you will pass down for generations.
Thanks. Thanks to both of you. And I'll just add, too, on the CEO side, being one, I think that CEO's side hustle is philanthropy. Yeah. And there is an obligation to pull others along without looking at who they are. And I see that. I'm so hopeful about the younger generation and your ability to do that, even more so than we're doing now. I think we would all wish that we did more when we're done. Not that we earn more money, but that we pulled more people along with us. So speaking of people pulling you along, talk about your mentors and what they taught you. I heard Jerry Laybourne being mentioned. Jerry Laybourne is just amazing, amazing woman and has pulled many women along with her. She created a whole TV channel for women. So if you would talk just a little about Jerry, because I just love her.
So again, and I'm probably overemphasizing this, but I'm just very passionate about it, is when I chose my career, at every step, I looked at who I was surrounding myself by. So I took companies and I took positions in departments that were led by women. So I did that from my very first job in investment banking. I took one of the only investment banking divisions that was run by a woman, Karen Bechtel. When I went to ABC after Disney and business school, again, I picked to work for Jerry. So I specifically picked that job. It was, again, a pay cut. It was like my third pay cut, but I wanted to work for Jerry. And Jerry had an amazing reputation, both in women as well as in media. And I thought, well, whatever organization she's going to put together is the one that I want to be in and I'm going to thrive in. So when you're in corporations, again, you're looking for the group and the person and the leader that you think will create that network that you will be a part of, because even after you leave that, you're still friends with them, you're in the same industry, it is a network. So just in my experience, if you want to try and get mentors and get people that are focused on you, the best people are people you work with or you work for, and not necessarily those mentor programs as much, but it's really the ones where they know you really well, they care about you. So how do you get into that space? So you look for the people who you want to be with and want to be around and believe will care about you and everything, as Clayton says, that you are, and they will see you. And past your ethnicity and past your gender and past everything else that makes you weird and you, and see that you are contributing, you're valuable, you're dedicated, you're loyal, you're smart, and all the things that you need to do to contribute to that company. So that's what you look out for. And Jerry, my number one oracle in my whole life, was the one that I picked to work for very specifically. And I went after that, and I got that just as I would have gone after any other job description or any specific goal I had. My goal was to work for Jerry.
Let's get Jerry here next year, Dolly, huh?
Yeah.
Clayton, okay, keep
Jerry's
it
good people.
Yep.
I know
Keep it
Jerry
short
as
because
well.
we're going to get questions.
Okay, I know Jerry as well. She wasn't my mentor, but definitely a good person for me to look up to. Carol Mechanic, who worked at Showtime, was a great mentor of mine. And Tom Hayden, who's now the CEO of Smithsonian. And Bob Gerard, who was our general counsel at Sega Channel. So I've had some great mentors, but those aren't the only three. There's just mentors throughout your life. I would recommend one quick thing. Create sort of a small personal board of directors. Sort of 3 or 4 people, maybe 2 or 3, that you can always sort of count on and look to keep you moving in the right direction. I have that. I hope that you guys would form that.
And I could use a reverse mentor. So if anyone would like to volunteer for that, you know where I am. Let's take some questions from the audience. A little hard to see out here, but I think I see a hand here. Oh, we have the mics.
Here. Oh, we got one over here. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Bethany Bloom. I'm a marketing major from Frostburg State University. Yeah. At some point, I would like to start my own business too. That's kind of a big goal of mine. And my question was, at what point in your career did you realize it was the right time to kind of break out of your comfort zone and go into your own, into entrepreneurship?
That's a great question.
For me, it was, I actually just came up with a really great idea, and I felt like I could put as much effort, ultimate effort to make it work. So what it was back in the day, we used CD-ROMs, right? You guys remember some of them? Maybe not, but they're like music discs. So anyway, these CD-ROMs were the one platform that you could put sort of multimedia on back in the day. I took it and I cut it into a square, and I made it into like a business card look. Me and this guy in Switzerland over a few beers. And we threw it in the machine, and it wrecked the machine, but it tried to play it. And that's when we decided to refine it, and we created this thing called the DigiCard. So I was working at Comedy Central at the time. Yeah, I had a side hustle. But the point was...
Aha!
But I was in line to become CEO. Hello. So, but we got this thing, and there's some triggers that can happen. For me, I had a trigger also, you know, in terms of passing of a family member. So that sort of put me on a trajectory of, boy, I really got to hurry. You know, I got to really get moving on this. So I had a product. I had an idea that I just really felt so passionate about that I felt I could leave corporate America and try to make it work, and it did work.
He hit the nail on the head. It is, you have to be so passionate, right? Because I told you the worst part about it is like everything, right? And so you have to be so passionate, and it has to drive you through. You have to believe in what you're doing, and that the world is better if that happens. And the only other thing I'd add to Clayton is, and I don't know if you had one, but try and find a co-founder who can share with you, and hopefully has different strengths, right? But that on those low moments, you need someone that's going to pull you out of that, you know, depression, and vice versa. So I find it really, really hard if you're a single founder, and much better if you're a double founder, you know, co-founder with somebody. But he's absolutely right. That product has to just propel you every day to just fight against the world, to get the world to recognize what you think.
Hi, my name is Kiana. I'm pursuing my master's in international communications, but in terms of experience, I've kind of gotten into a lot of different fields that
Hold your mic up a little closer.
that are not really related. So my question to you is, you talked a lot about the positives, about these top companies that you've worked for and that you've succeeded in. And my question to you is, being a recent grad, going into my master's, I found it difficult to even get my foot in the door, to even, you know, talk to someone who was of importance of a company that I was really passionate about. So how did you guys even get your foot in the door, and who did you connect with?
That's a good question. So I'll give you my answer, which was, you know, the career center of University of Michigan, right? So how I got into Morgan Stanley, I had no contacts, I had no finance background, and I was lucky. I lucked out into getting an analyst position, but I don't have a good answer to that, Clayton. I don't know if you do. I mean, there's so many talented people and in the corporate. So the only thing I would say is, and I'm going to piss him off because I'm going to say side hustle again, but what I would say is sometimes you do just need to get your foot in the door. So broaden your definition of foot in the door, right? So don't just look for the exact perfect job, or it lines up exactly with what you want, or it has a salary you want. Make sure you're not too picky. Right, so picky is what I find a lot.
Really good point. Foot in the door, everybody.
Yeah, so just broaden that, and then keep your side hustle to keep you excited and happy and whatever. But broaden your definition of what foot in the door means. Look for other companies that you wouldn't look for jobs that you're not necessarily in love with, but just don't be so, the world is here for me to figure out what I want to do. Because right now, you're trying to figure out how you fit in, so just keep that broad.
George Bodenheimer, who was the CEO of ESPN and recently retired, he started as a mail clerk in the mailroom at ESPN, and I do believe he had a college degree. So there you go. Clayton?
Go to the next question. Let's keep the questions going.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ava Perrine, and I teach at Delaware State University. And I actually just have a comment. Of course, this process, this event, is geared toward college students, and all of you are trying to get where you're trying to go, but it's nice to see people who are in the midst of their careers in various aspects of it, so you understand how to stay relevant, how to keep the thing going, because it's more than just the start. It's a long haul throughout all kinds of adversity and life situations and so forth. And so it's nice to hear the advice that you're giving people about just how to keep it going.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Super nice. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you very much. And one more question? Thank you. I want to say to that last question, another thing I thought of that worked for me, volunteer. Volunteer, volunteer. Amazing how many people you meet when you volunteer. So volunteer for this next year with Dolly.
Hi, my name is Eugene Chung, and I am an entrepreneur major at Pace University. I was listening to both of you guys' stories, and you guys have multiple side hustles or multiple startups you guys do, and different experiences you guys have, and you guys just kind of curious, like, how do you guys put it together? Like, for each of you guys' business you guys start, is it relevant to one another, or is it kind of different and you kind of diversify your portfolio in that sort of way?
Are you asking how these two
Yes.
fit
Or-
together?
Or all you guys in general in life?
I got you. So for me, if I was to put a big umbrella over my career and try to tie it to one sort of industry, it would be, the largest word would be telecommunications. So I've been into some level of communications in every one of my positions and jobs, including my own companies. Always been around creative, always been around how do you get connectivity, how do you get access to visuals and sounds and all that kind of stuff. So it's all under this banner of communications, maybe communications even more broader, has been my career, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that was it. And I might be what would have been your second answer, which I think is, for me, it transformed later, but it went into entrepreneurialism. It was just, I don't know if I'm like a control freak or I don't know what it is, but there's just, I have to start companies. I have to start from nothing. Nothing has to be there, and then I come in and I help it be something and make it great, right? So, I don't know, that's just like some dysfunction I have that I have to keep doing that.
Another way we're connected is we're now friends. We didn't know each other before this started, but now I feel like I'll call Clayton, I'll call Daphne, they'll call me. That's how this all works. We volunteered, and it's a beautiful thing. And we all love Dolly and what she's created. So let's give her a big hand.
Thank you, Dolly.
And that, my friends, is the end of this, but we'll be here for a few minutes if we can talk to any of you individually.
That moves, yeah.